Good morning. Welcome to Live Impact News. I'm Julie Kay here with Carlene Bragg, and we're going to be here throughout the day bringing you the biggest updates. Most of them, of course, will be about the deadly crash from yesterday at the Statesville Regional Airport, which killed 7 people, including Greg Biffle and his family. Obviously, heartbreaking news, not just for the families involved, but for the NASCAR community. He was such a legend in that sport and also in his generosity afterwards. You're seeing here video that we got from the plane crash, and you can just see how devastating it was. No survivors in that fiery crash. So we're going to have reporters out on the scene all day working both angles of this. Of course, what happened, as we are expecting an update from the NTSB, and also, how do we remember this family lost? We're going to get out to Destiny Richards this morning first, though, who's live at the airport as we await that update from the NTSB's investigation. Destiny, I know there's a lot to work with here. What do we know right now?
Yeah, we've been following this throughout the morning, and we're a couple miles down from the airport, but as the sun came up, we could see the wreckage left behind from this devastating crash. Right now, we know that federal investigators from the NTSB, they have just arrived on scene. I would say within the last hour or so, we've been seeing them just kind of parked nearby the wreckage, and then also along Old Airport Road, which is the adjacent road to the airport that is blocked off and has been blocked off since yesterday because the airport is closed and this investigation is continuing. The debris cleanup is continuing as well. And right now, we believe that they're going to be focusing and have been focusing on, looking at the plane itself, the wreckage of it. They're also going to be looking at the flight path. So exactly what happened in those moments before the crash. Yesterday, we spoke with an NTSB investigator, a former NTSB investigator, who said the flight path is really what's raising questions for investigators, or what will be raising questions. And then also looking at the type of plane this is. It's a Cessna 550. This is a small business jet. It was built in 1981, but it's not the age of the plane that's really a concern. It might be the interior or the mechanical issues that there possibly could have been. So it's maintenance history. So not just looking at the plane itself, the type of plane and the history of this specific plane, but also the flight path and what happened in those moments after takeoff when it circled back and crashed. So again, this morning we're expected to, or this afternoon, we're expecting to hear from NTSB an update on their investigation. At this time, we are seeing federal investigators down at the scene of the crash, and again, roads closed off leading to the airport, as it is still closed at this time. Live in Statesville, I'll send it back to you, Julie.
And Destiny, thank you for breaking that all down for us. Just to be able to get that close-up view of what's left of that plane is both heartbreaking and really complicated, knowing what the NTSB investigators have ahead of them. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll let you get back to all the hard work you're doing out there. We're going to move on to the statements that we have from the family, of course. We got this confirmed on Live Impact News from a family friend who said that this family was on their way to come visit them in Florida. And this is the first word we're hearing from the actual families of the victims. In part, it says, "We are devastated by the loss of our loved ones. This tragedy has left all our families heartbroken beyond words. Greg and Christina were devoted parents and active philanthropists whose lives were centered around their young son, Ryder, and Greg's daughter, Emma. Emma was a wonderful human being with a kind soul who was loved by many people. Ryder was an active, curious, and infinitely joyful child. Dennis Dutton and his son Jack were deeply loved as well, and their loss is felt by all who knew them. Craig Wadsworth was beloved by many in the NASCAR community and will be missed by those who knew him." Of course, they then go on to ask for privacy during this time. You can only imagine how, I know we keep saying the word heartbroken, but that's really just all there is for this devastating loss. And this is the first insight we're getting into how this family is moving forward with this grief. There are so many questions left to answer, of course, about how do we remember the legacy, not just of their impact in the NASCAR community, his impact as a phenomenal driver, but also the charity work that they mentioned, their lives as philanthropists afterwards. Just incredible work done for Hurricane Helene. I know that they volunteered to help with Jamaica. So there's a long legacy to remember here, but also we want to get those answers about what happened in this crash. So we're going to have reporters out there in Statesville all day long, in Mooresville, where their family lived. We're going to take a quick break, though, and be right back in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News, 9:08 on the clock. So we want to get a check-in with our sweet Chris Mulcahy on the forecast. Oh, getting ready for not just
cute.
Christmas, but also your birthday. It's coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's you and a couple other people that remind me because I just forget about it. It's I just kind of discount it because it just gets absorbed into Christmas.
When I found out that your birthday was Christmas, I was like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And so I cannot forget because I'm like, yep, that. Every time I hear Chris Mulcahy, I'm like, Christmas, baby.
Yep, it's a Christmas Chris.
He's a
Makes
Christmas
sense.
boy.
Yep, and that's why I have that elf-like energy. I guess it makes sense, right? And actually, a fun fact. So I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and they did a news special on the NBC station up there about Christmas babies, and I was one of them. So I was actually on the news for my first day of life. So
As a baby?
Yeah, so foreshadowing, I guess, at its finest.
Oh, the prophecy has come true. Here he
has.
is.
Born for news.
It has.
Ride for news.
And it first was confirmed by Storm 6 days before Christmas. So raise your hand, and I can't tell if you actually do, if you heard storms last night or early this morning. Okay, there we go. We got 3 for 3 here. Well, I was here. I didn't really hear it because we work in a concrete box.
It's true. I
yeah.
want a window.
Yeah, no, windows really help. That would be really nice. Like right over there.
We have like a fake window.
Yeah.
It just goes to the hallway. You can see it.
Yeah,
now. I
which-
mean,
Yeah, technically we have
I got
windows.
a nice view of a wall.
yeah. The wall. We can look at the wall to the conference room if we really want to.
Ooh, or one of those like fancy, expensive windows that you can change the scene to like
would
Fiji
be-
and stuff.
that would
Oh
be
Great.
man,
So
yeah.
we could be, in Key West all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's 2 things I would want. I want one of those, or I want blinds with the remote. Yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
That's cash money dollars.
Yeah, not there yet.
We're not there yet. We gotta do our own blinds.
But if y'all keep watching the stream, maybe.
Maybe. There we go. Keep watching. Keep
you
us
can
on.
help us get blinds with a remote.
Well, I want to start with this viewer. It says viewer video from Lexi from Harrisburg. This was just around 5 o'clock or just afterwards. This is from a rain camera, and it was really significant rain that was coming through, torrential rain that came along with this. I actually got into work, and I was like, oh, wow, this is classic QLCS. And what that means is it's a quasi-linear convective system that can have kinks along the line that allow for
As you
spin-up
push up your
tornadoes.
glasses on your nose.
Yeah, yes, indubitably. Well, what was interesting about this, and I'll admit it, I'm one of the more honest meteorologists that I will say. I was watching this, and it just kept on getting more worse. And I'm like, okay, well, it's December. We don't have the instability that we have during the spring. And I said literally at the top of the 4:30 half hour, and I was like, thank goodness this is in the spring, because I could see a lot of spin-up tornadoes along with this. And the next thing you know, we were seeing different images like this that I actually took a screenshot 5 minutes into our show. That's the Dallas camera, and it looked like torrential downpours. And my first thought was like, oh man, that almost looks like it could be a rain-wrapped funnel cloud. Well, there's a possibility that could have been the case. This is really broad rotation, so most likely it was just rain. It also could have been a microburst, so that's a quick little burst of winds. Well, we are constantly seeing bursts of 20 miles per hour. That's nothing. 60 mile per hour winds that brought down a lot of trees in Cabarrus County, over in Stanley County. We had multiple roads that were blocked by large branches, and it was all correlated with the center of this thunderstorm that actually got a severe thunderstorm warning right around the 5 o'clock hour that had a tornado tag. So it was a possibility of rotation. So it's like one of those things that was all kind of like in my head, and I was almost confused. Maybe it was just that early in the morning. I was like, no way this is happening. I was like, I can't use the T word 6 days before Christmas. And it's not confirmed that that was the case, but this is as close as you're going to come. And it was a quick moving line. At one time, it was moving 45 to 50 miles per hour and then providing winds over that range. Meanwhile, right up in Beach Mountain, the wind word, windy is the best way to describe it, where winds have been on and off this time frame, but also another great described word, an adjective, sunshine, sunny.
Yay.
Sunny days. We are looking at barely any clouds, but also bringing this full circle. One of my favorite cameras to show you is the Charlotte Motor Speedway cam, and check this out. Oh wait, this is Kannapolis.
That's Kannapolis.
That's Kannapolis.
That's not a speedway.
That's not
You
Charlotte
could
Motor
drive
Speedway.
around
That's a
it.
good one though.
That
Yeah,
is
it's a
pretty
All right,
good.
here it is.
Oh, that's nice.
You know what? That's a nice HVAC.
So I was waiting for my
Fresh.
weather hits, all excited to say when I was like, oh man, the storm's right there. And then next thing you know, a severe thunderstorm warning was chimed. I was watching the camera jump up and down, and then it went black. And when it came back, it was this. So literally the camera, I think, was knocked off its mount, and it's a little bit higher up. It really just shows the power of those winds. Our WCNC tower cam, can't use it. That's down as well.
Wow.
So the winds were strong enough to take out 2 of our cameras, bring down some trees. This is substantial, and what's I think kind of ironic about this is we had a few weather alert mornings earlier in spring that had a very similar setup to this, a lot more instability. This was worse than those, where we've actually had a lot of quiet mornings overall. So some of you might be cleaning up, just letting you know. Luckily, all of our yards kind of look like doo-doo anyway, so you don't really have to go out of your way. But I just wanted to kind of show you some of the impacts living in the past before we move forward. This is also a weird day, y'all. The reason why is that we are hitting our highs and lows at different times than normal. So right now we're in the lower 50s. Sunshine will allow us to warm back up to the mid to the upper 50s, but check it out. We've already hit our high temperature for the day. So if you thought that your to-do list was really busy today, at least you already got your high temperature done. 63. That was the temperature at 4:30. We're back to the upper 50s come 2 and 3. Then we see another push for winds out of the northwest, and that's going to bring our low for the day right before midnight, about 38. So if you have any late evening plans, I don't because I'm working tomorrow morning.
Same.
Say, okay, yeah, so
Yay,
join Julie and I. We're going to have a good
yay.
time. But we typically hit our low temperature right as the sun is rising up. It may be an hour before, sometimes an hour after, depending on the cloud cover. That's one of the common misconceptions because you say overnight lows, it really should be sunrise lows because that's typically when you hit it. And of course, you usually hit your high temperature about 4 o'clock this year. Well, it's all over the place because of a couple of passing fronts. If you go to the McAdenville lights, yesterday was not a good time. This is much better, especially if you're in your car. You can have the heaters going. But I always say, if you have somebody that lives there, you can park at their house, or there's a parking lot down the road. There's other places that you park. I won't name drop them. Just kind of Google it. There are a lot of places you can park because you need to walk around, because when you drive through, it's beautiful, but when you walk around, you're missing some of the houses that have synchronized lights to music. You're missing some of the more interactive displays. You're missing the coffee tables of free hot chocolate and hot apple cider.
Free?
Yes, free.
You like
I
free.
love free.
For free.
For free.
They do that for Halloween as well, which, by the way, Halloween in McAdenville is like a movie.
I love that.
Where
That's what you told us, yeah.
it's amazing. So it's one of my every year type of events. Also, the Festival of Lights or Celebration of Lights in Kannapolis, that's going on through Christmas, and tomorrow Mickey and Minnie are going to be there. So just letting you know,
What?
and I will be there as well. All right.
Wow.
Miss Disneyland over here.
Yeah.
Disney World.
I know, like
I
was
just talked to them. Now they're up here.
Yeah.
They travel.
they do travel.
They get around.
They get around.
Oh yeah, you're down in Florida.
I was down in
and
Florida.
This is totally the same ones.
Same exact.
Yeah, same
yes.
ones. There's only ones, kids.
Busy mice.
Our weather word for the day is windy, and that's because you have wind gusts about 20 to 30 miles per hour on and off throughout the day. And then we also have some wind alerts for the mountains, so that's going to be a high wind warning, meaning wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour for Watauga and Ashe County, and then a wind advisory, and that goes for Avery County. The difference here is about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So it's closer to 50 for Avery. It's closer to 60 for Watauga and Ashe County. So that's only the slight difference. Regardless, it's going to be windy as all bleep up in the mountains, especially almost doubling the winds that we have.
That's enough to like knock over a trash can too, right?
It's also enough to have an inflatable alert.
Oh.
So, gusty winds. Now, the good news for us is the strongest winds are during the afternoon. But once you get to the evening, we're still going to have gusty winds up to about 25. So that is enough to disrupt a frosty, because we have two things working against us. Not only do we have the wind gusts bringing us into the high risk zone, but wet soil also weakens the anchor's grip onto the ground. We've had a lot of rain, up to an inch for many locations, including a quick soaking this morning. So I just want everyone to be noticed that neighbor's yard could be a possibility for the giant minions and the Rudolphs of the world. Not quite down the street like the last time that we had an inflatable alert. So now you know. Okay, going into the weekends, I already mentioned the winds, but I also want to mention how we feel. If you have any plans this coming evening, wind chills will be a factor, because as temperatures drop to the upper 30s, if you still keep a breeze around, it's not going to be really pleasant. So that means through the evening hours, I went too far, sorry about that, you are dealing with the upper 20s, even though it might be only in the upper 30s. So you have a wind chill to worry about if you are going to the Celebration of Lights, or maybe going to Winterfest tonight. Keep that in mind. Or maybe you're just partying. I don't know what you're doing. By tomorrow, you have temperatures in the mid-20s, and then we don't really have to worry about wind chills after that. So today's highs, as I mentioned, going to be in the upper 50s before we start to cool down. This weekend's forecast, upper 50s, starting off at freezing on Saturday.
That's nice.
Sunday, since Monday, I've been calling my pick of the week. And the way I judge mine, I actually had a viewer message me that they said technically the calendar goes Sunday through Saturday. But as a parent, most people Think about the work week as Monday through Friday and then Saturday and Sunday. So whenever I do pick of the week, just letting you know, I know it doesn't go with the Sabbath. I do this because I think that's most easy to understand, starting off on Monday, going through Sunday. So in a rare case, the last day of my 7-day span was the best. And then meanwhile, moving forward, I might even say that next week it might be Christmas Eve, or I might even go as far as next Friday, because notice that we get a little bit cooler on Monday. We start warming back up, but I have the upper 60s for last minute shoppers on Christmas Eve, mid to the upper 60s with a mix of cloud and sunshine on Thursday, and then the long range forecast showing even a jump to the lower 70s for Boxing Day, start of Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate on the 26th, and then still around 70 degrees come the 27th. So regardless, it's going to be closer to a record compared to where we should be, well above average temperatures to say the least. So this is my 10-day forecast where I kind of show you what time of year it feels like. We actually are feeling more like November, even October over the next 10 days. Meanwhile, I think I showed you this 2 weeks ago, and everything was just flatline, feeling like January. So December's been confusing, y'all. So it's been quite the ride.
I love a close to 70-degree Christmas. Count me in.
If we can't have a white Christmas, might as well go the entire opposite direction.
A
And
different
here's the
W.
thing, if you want a white Christmas, you don't need to live here.
This is
This is not the place to live. Sorry.
And what's interesting about that, because technical definition, like the ultra stickler definition, is you have to have an inch of snow on the ground for it to
push
be
up
a
your
technical white
glasses on
Yeah,
your nose
yes,
definition?
it's not because my nose was itchy right there. That's my nerd glasses. But then also a more simple version is people have kind of lowered the bar that, hey, as long as you're seeing snow. For us, we've only had a measurable snowfall of 1 inch or above 2 times in 147 years here in Charlotte.
Right.
And it's not this year. It's not
Definitely not
this
this
year.
year. I know there
No,
can't
it's-
be negative chances, but might as well be
We posted
0.
T-shirts weather for Christmas this year. which
No,
I
seriously
love.
though. Yeah, it's I'm dreaming of a warm Christmas.
Warm.
My parents are coming in from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll be working, so I'll be here in the stream from 8 to
they're
3
gonna
on
be-
Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, if anyone's curious.
Okay.
Okay.
But my parents are coming in from Cincinnati, where they've had a ton of snow.
So they're gonna love
like
it.
an abnormal
Yeah, they're
amount.
gonna love
they're gonna have a
that.
good time.
They're gonna have a good
They're gonna
time.
have a good time.
That's gonna be good. Yeah, I know, and they're gonna love this Queen City.
I know that is the drama.
Drama.
Is that they live in the other Queen City?
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of beef between who is first, but I do have to claim Charlotte.
Yeah, but do you know why? Because we have an actual queen, not some weird poem about a boat. That's what it is.
I
It's a
think-
steamship.
Cincinnati should be the Cincinnati Chili City, because that's really, we've talked
That
about
is
this.
true.
I
Are
think
you
that's
Gold
the-
Star or are you Skyline?
Gold Star.
Gold Star?
I know that's like a hot take. I prefer a family owned.
Oh, okay.
I'll be brave.
Okay,
I'd
yeah.
say. But they do have in the airport there Skyline Chili, and I think that's the bravest option for
Well-
That's brave to
Yeah.
about to eat down that and go on a plane.
Cincinnati. spaghetti
Well,
chili.
my wife is from Ohio.
Right.
So loves Skyline. So if your parents could bring her some Skyline, that would make her Christmas. It probably won't be as good after the plane ride. But
Tupperware, get a bow on top. It'll be so
Aw,
cute.
cute.
yeah, no, actually, we are planning a trip just in general because now JT's getting older. Like,
Yeah.
wherever you grow up, there's your food places that you want to
Of
share with
course.
places. And it's funny, people from Cincinnati share chili with other people, and most likely, if you're not from there, you do not like it.
You do not.
It's weird. It's one of the weirdest things. I thought it was okay.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. You put chocolate powder in your chili. That's different.
It's a sweeter chili. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't grow up with it because they moved there, when I was older, and it has grown on me. But the first try was a little weird.
Yeah.
You get used to it after a while.
I'll try anything.
Like,
It's not-
well,
there's
because
not much I really
what
don't.
you would like is they have 3, 4, and 5 ways. A 3-way is spaghetti, chili, and cheese.
So much
But
cheese.
I like the coney dog. That's the way to go.
Ooh, the coney
A
dog's
good
good.
coney dog. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll eat it. I'll
Yeah,
try
you
it.
do.
I'm gonna have to call my parents. Hey, can you bring 25 cans of Skyline chili? Because now I've got so many people who want to try it.
Yeah, and the Skyline chili can, I still feel like it hits differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the classic.
And their cheese, so finely shredded.
So
mounds
much cheese.
Up. All right. Anyone from not from there is like, we have no idea what you're
We're
talking
over
about.
this, yeah.
But real quick, I know that it's going to be a really busy schedule. I know we got some parades that we're streaming, right?
Do have some
Look at,
parades.
look at this pretty graphic I made.
Woo! I didn't know you made
So
this.
we don't have a white Christmas, but you can look at
Wait, you
snow on
made this?
graphic. I sure did.
Wow, this looks really good. I didn't know who made this.
I did it.
Great job.
Thank you, everybody.
Beautiful.
I'm patting myself on the back. Thanks.
No, everyone. That's great because we literally show this all the time. That's wonderful.
Yay.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So if you missed the last couple parades, we got one tonight, Fort Mill Christmas Parade. So at 9:30 p.m. Here on WCNC Plus. We're going to have the parade, and you can see our schedule here throughout. So other than the weekend, every weekday until Christmas Day, we're going to have something fun and festive at
Including
9:30.
the Santa Tracker, which
Santa
I
Tracker.
love.
9:30 p.m.
It's sometime after 9. I think
I
it
believe it's
varies.
9:30.
It varies depending if we have Panthers or not.
Yeah,
Just you know
that's it.
what? Just keep us on.
Okay.
Why would you
All the
turn this
time.
off? You just keep it on, and eventually you'll hit a parade.
Question: Santa tracker is like a button? How's that work?
What do you mean?
How's the Santa tracker? Do you just like
The
if you
NORAD Santa Tracker?
Yeah, but like how do we access it on our WCNC Plus?
You know,
With
I don't know.
Magic.
Okay. Magic.
ask
Christmas
our digital
magic?
team will know. Hey,
Okay.
hey, digital team, call
Carlene
in.
said, I made the graphic. I,
I
don't
made the
need
graphic.
to know
I don't know how it
about
works.
anything else."
Also, I will admit that I have been the nagging log over here saying that for Christmas we should just have a burning Yule logs. That is
I
also on
agree.
demand on WCNC Plus.
agree.
I still watch Blu-rays and I collect a new one every
You
year.
Blu-rays?
Yeah, I love
Aw.
Blu-rays. Yes, and I get a new one every year. JT's not watching, so I can spoil this. He got Mario this year, so we're adding to it. So he loves
Fun.
that. But no, which is great when the internet goes out. I got movies for days.
yeah, you know.
But I literally have a Blu-ray that has a variety of different fires.
How often do you crank up your Blu-ray?
I'm probably Blu-ray raying on the rags probably once a week.
On the
Once a
regs.
week?
Once a week,
Really?
yeah. Well,
Good
because
for you.
JT loves to watch movies
it
now,
alive.
so we pump it up. Yeah, I Blu-rayed Rudolph yesterday,
Okay.
and do you know what blew my mind?
Yeah.
Do you know who Rudolph's dad is?
No.
Donner.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, I was watching, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yes, son. Well, the Donners, and I was like, what do you mean?
I didn't know there was a family tree
Wait,
within
and
the
Donner is
lineup.
the last name?
Yeah, Donner is the last
he's
name.
Rudolph
Donner?
Donner?
So Rudolph Donner.
And is dad
technically.
Donner, or is he got a
Ooh,
different
that's a
first
good
name?
question.
That's my-
I don't know. I hope it's not like Chaz or something. I mean, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a
Yeah, Chaz Donner.
Chaz Donner?
Yeah,
Imagine
I
if
think
it's,
they're
like,
all
not-
last names. So
not
yeah,
holiday themed. It's just like Bill.
yeah. I was just like, oh,
It's just
Bill.
Jonathan.
Do you
Donner.
recall Bill the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Thank you for keeping Blu-rays alive. You
Oh,
know,
I know.
because you said the power goes out. The power went out at my.
Oh, no,
the
internet goes out.
I'm sorry, the internet. The internet went out.
Power.
not
I'm
too
still
long.
black rectangle.
The only DVD that we have in our house, Ace Ventura.
Oh.
So we
Fair.
watched Ace
Pet
Ventura,
Detective or
Pet
When Nature
Detective.
Calls?
It was a double. It had a.
Oh,
it was
the
a-
two,
it was
that's
a
nice.
Two, but
Mhm.
you gotta watch Pet Detective, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is where we're at.
So, and I alphabetize mine. I'm actually a.
Oh my gosh! Push up your glasses once again.
I am a mess. You should see what my desk looks like. But the only thing I keep organized is my Blu-rays. So like going through, just like thinking of letters, I got Avengers, Breakfast Club, Caddyshack, Coraline, Dante's Peak. Awesome.
Wow.
Eagle Eye, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Ghostbusters, Harry Potter, all 8 movies. So yeah, no, I got them.
Memorize your.
No, I'm just visually trying to think of
Gotcha.
them all.
A slight callback to our Santa Tracker conversation. Our digital director actually she's our stream director, just messaged us and said it shows where he's at in the world at that moment. It starts in Australia, which I didn't know. So,
No, that makes
Well,
sense.
you do the. I know
I
it's
did-
Santa Tracker.
But you
but I
gotta
didn't know
start
that he
down
began in
under.
Australia every year. Makes sense.
Yes.
Fun fact.
Think of that, and then it goes west.
Right. I like watching the Santa Tracker because it's one of those things where it's a nice brush up on your geography. You know
Yep.
what I mean? You're like, I forgot about these little countries here. and
Shows
there.
pictures of where
Man.
he is, like gives you a little
Yeah.
description,
I-
shows you how many presents he's dropping.
Right.
Plenty.
I gotta push up my glasses again. I literally asked for flashcards for world flags and countries because that's what I want to learn in 2026.
Aw.
Yeah,
That's a fun
I want to
one.
learn
Are you
all
and
the.
JT doing it together? Y'all learn together?
Well, he needs to focus on the states first, and then I'll pass these on
Let's
to.
focus on the basics.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead in the knowledge pioneering, and
You're
then I'll
brushing
pass
up
it on
for
to
the
him.
Olympics is what I'm saying, with all
That's
the
it.
countries and the
Hey,
flag.
that's another tease.
Because we all know the Olympics. If you watch for the whole entire thing, once you get past the main countries, I was like, where are these?
And these flags, and they get
Oh, I know.
fancy, or, you know, I'm like, what in the world? What flag is that?
All that to say, I'm putting it back up on the screen.
Go ahead.
That's me. Never mind. Wrong thing. I tried to punch it up and I
It's
wasn't.
okay. I
It's
got
all right.
Thank you.
Say, wait, hold
Still
on.
learning
wait,
the
There it
wait,
is.
let's play and. Oh no, that's not it at all. Hold on. My bad.
All that to say,
Whee!
NORAD Santa Track is going to be on Christmas Eve tonight, Fort Mill Christmas Parade. Little break this weekend, but you can join me and Chris tomorrow morning. I'm sure we'll have some festive stuff then.
Yes, we will.
And then we're back with the Mooresville Christmas Parade on Monday night. So stick with us. We're going to take a break, let Chris get to our morning meeting to share the weather. Woo! Woo! And we'll be back in about 2 minutes at 9:30. Stick with us. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. Just got a check of your forecast, but of course, we're going to be hitting this breaking news story, the news all across our region of this plane crash all day long. So 7 people killed tragically in this crash at the Statesville Regional Airport. 4 of them from Greg Biffle's family. Greg Biffle, his wife Christina, and his 2 children. Heartbreaking situation, and we're getting more reaction today from people who knew him. So I think we have a statement from RFK Racing that we want to pull up. So this says, all of us at RFK Racing are devastated by the heartbreaking news involving the Biffle family. Greg Biffle has long been a cherished member of our racing family as a person, family man, and driver. His accomplishments helped form a cornerstone of our organization. We extend our deepest condolences to the Biffle family and to all of their loved ones and friends during this incredibly difficult time. We are going to speak with Mike Massaro from RFK Racing in the next 30 minutes at 10 o'clock. So please stick with us, because to be able to speak with someone who knew them so intimately.
Right. And Mike worked as a pit reporter. He
Yeah.
worked for covered NASCAR at ESPN and on NBC. So, and he covered him while he was racing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a great insight to the career and the legacy that we haven't really heard yet.
I know, and especially because we have focused so much, and I think as everyone should, on the generosity of this family, but
Yes.
still want to remember the legacy of his career too, and
Absolutely.
how it began.
Yeah, he's just recently named one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers.
Yeah, and he was, I believe, a nominee for the Hall of Fame.
He was nominated for the Hall of Fame for the 2025 class, yes.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Hall of Fame.
Yeah, our Danielle Stein, one of our sports reporters here, got a chance to speak with, I believe, the director of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is, of
Executive
course,
director, yes,
here
Winston
in Charlotte, Winston. So we're going to listen into this interview from last night.
This has been a very hard day for the sports community at large, but specifically those involved in NASCAR. Executive Director of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, Winston Kelly. I mean, if you're able to just explain from your perspective what this loss, just on a first page, I guess, means to the sport as a whole right now.
Well, I don't think devastating is a strong enough word, but I don't have enough command of the English language to come up with what it is. You know, it's devastating, heartbreaking. I think we're all numb. And you know, NASCAR is very much a family. And at times like this, you realize how important that family is. And all 7 people on that plane are part of that family in some way or another. And while there will be most of the conversation about Greg Biffle, who was a superstar athlete, but he was a superstar human being, as was his wife, Christina. And we certainly remember his daughter, Emma, son, Ryder, as well as the Duttons, Dennis, and his son Jack, and Greg Wadsworth, who was a part of the NASCAR community. So, you know, it's overwhelming, but we want to remember the quality people that they were.
Yeah, it seems like that is by far and large the impact that he's made on so many is just the person he was and how many lives he touched. Do you have any anecdotes or memories that you can share that maybe you experienced with him that kind of paint the picture of who Greg was?
Well, I think, you know, what people are rightfully talking about is how he came to the rescue of so many following Hurricane Helene. And he didn't just send money or pass out water bottles. He got in his helicopter with his money and flew into very challenging areas. And that's just an example of the type of person that he was. He was always approachable. As I was a member of the media, and Christina, his wife, participated in many of our fundraisers for the NASCAR Hall of Fame Foundation that helps children most in need. And she did our Over the Edge, rappelling down the side of a building, and raised money to do that. So that, you know, just the quality of people that they were. And you know, I've heard a lot of people call into the NASCAR radio channel who were fans who had the pleasure of meeting him, and reminded people he always took that 15, 20, 30 seconds to sign an autograph, take a picture. You know, the stats you can read about. If you're a nominee into the NASCAR Hall of Fame and one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers, you are among the elite athletes. But he and Christina were elite people, and I did not know the Duttons or Craig as well, or not at all to some extent with the Duttons, but I hear the same thing about them. So it's the quality of the people that resonates with me so much.
Yeah, it's a rarity to find someone to be so excelling in sport, but also to be such an exceptional, just human being. Just seeing the outpouring of support from fellow drivers, from some of the greats in the sport as well. What has it just been like from your perspective? Like you said, the NASCAR world is a family, and it's been one that's been touched by tragedies before. So to see people coming together right now and, you know, remembering Greg and his life and legacy, what does that look like from your perspective as well?
Well, I think it reminds us of the tragedies that we've had, be it 30 years ago or, you know, 20 years ago, that this family always comes together and supports each other. While, you know, competitors on a racetrack or on any sports field, but on a racetrack where it's so intense, you know, they may have their difference of opinions, but they quickly realize how insignificant that was. You know, one driver that he had a run-in with, you know, 20 years ago at Watkins Glen, Boris Said, called into a local show recently and was just talking about how they had become friends. And I think that's one of the things you see in our sport, and probably in other sports too, that just rallying around each other and realizing how blessed we are to have had him in our life. And, when people are as young as Greg and his family and the Duttons and Wadsworth are so young, it even amplifies the grief, I think, because they've so much that they have given and left to give. And, on earth, we don't understand why these things happen. And, maybe in an afterlife we will, but it's just devastating. But we've got to remember what they have done, not what they have done in a sport or business, but what they have done for people. And these folks certainly exemplify that.
In the sport, though, as you mentioned, he is one of the greats, named one of the 75 greatest. His career spanning 3 decades. Are you able to, though, speak a little bit about what kind of driver he was, who he was when he was getting in a car, and what kind of energy and persona he maybe took on that made him as successful as he did throughout his career?
Well, he was very focused, and most any driver that gets to the cup level is incredibly focused on what they're doing. But he also won on all different types of tracks. He was very versatile. He was quickly very successful, winning the Craftsman Truck Series championship in 2000. 2 years later, the Busch Series, now O'Reilly Auto Parts Series championship, coming very close in 2005 to be the first to win at all 3 national levels. And he won at some of NASCAR's toughest tracks like Darlington and Daytona. So he was focused, he was determined, he was a hard racer, but he was a fair racer. And could drive anything, any type of car. He did a lot of off-road racing after he got out of NASCAR, but he came back after he'd been retired a number of years and won a Truck Series race at Texas. Still incredibly fit. Saw him a couple of weeks ago at it's actually an autograph session that was a fundraiser. Just 2 weeks ago, he and Christina were both there, still giving back. But he was focused, but he was fair and a hard-nosed racer in the best of ways.
Was that the last time that you saw him or spoke with him that you were just describing, that autograph session?
Yes. It was literally 2 weeks ago at an autograph session in Mooresville that also raises money for a children's cause that several people, there's probably, 75, 80 people signing autographs, and he being one of them.
Wow, that's amazing. I know he was a nominee on the Modern Ballot this year once again. I know it's obviously been a little soon since the news has all happened, but from your side, from the Hall of Fame, I'm sure there could be some plans maybe moving forward to enshrine him. Are there any details or any plans as of right now that you have for wanting to make sure his legacy lives on in the Hall of Fame?
Well, we will acknowledge it. We don't make early enshrinements, and I don't think anybody would want that, even in their memory. And, as a nominee, in my opinion, it's not a matter of if he goes into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, it's when he goes into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And as a nominee, he's already acknowledged, but there will be a number of things that we will do on our exterior video board, our fan billboard inside the hall, acknowledging it as you go into the Hall of Honor, where inductees and nominees are recognized, and call that to people's attention. And like I said, I think it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when as a nominee.
All right, so that was just one of many moments that we've been able to finally hear on the legacy of Greg Biffle, not just in terms of the generosity of him and his family, but also his actual career, known as a phenomenal, talented driver. We want to read one more time the statement from the family here. This is the first insight we're getting into how they are reacting to this tragedy. It says, quote, "We are devastated by the loss of our loved ones. This tragedy has left all our families heartbroken beyond words. Greg and Christina were devoted parents and active philanthropists whose lives were centered around their young son, Ryder, and Greg's daughter, Emma. Emma was a wonderful human being with a kind soul who was loved by many people. Ryder was an active, curious, and infinitely joyful child. Dennis Dutton and his son Jack were deeply loved as well, and their losses felt by all who knew them. Craig Wadsworth was beloved by many in the NASCAR community and will be missed by those who knew him. They go in, of course, to ask for privacy during this time as they grieve, understandably. So this is a heartbreaking loss, especially right before the holidays, and it's such a fiery, devastating crash. So understandable to have this reaction. And
Well,
we-
they kind of said it back. Kelly said it best in the thing that it's like devastating isn't really even the word. Like there's not
There
really
isn't
a
a
word
word, yeah.
to put to it.
you and I were saying speechless yesterday
Yeah.
as we, especially this morning and last night, we were getting our first looks at what the plane actually looks like. And so you're grieving.
We fell silent. We couldn't believe what was in front of our eyes, and it's
Yeah.
it was just probably as raw of a reaction as you could get.
It's hard to look at.
It's hard to look at. It's
Yeah.
hard to swallow that people were on that plane.
It's, and we have been, I feel like Carlene and I, quite transparent over the
Yes.
last 24 hours of how we're getting this information, why we wait to release some information, but also in terms of our raw reaction, we want to be as transparent as possible. That's why we're giving you all of this information and asking those questions about what happened here, because you want to prevent this from happening again. But there are moments when you just process this live,
Right.
and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So we're going to take another quick break, but know that we are on this story all day. We've got our day reporters heading out to these areas, Statesville, Mooresville
All
today.
corners of the area
Yeah.
to try and
And
get more.
of course, our sports reporters on this as well. So we're following this from every angle we can. So know that, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Impact News. It is 9:47. I'm Julie Kay here. And we want to get back to that other angle of what happened here. We're expecting an update from the NTSB on this crash in the next few hours here, probably early afternoon. But when you look at video like this is from our news partners at CNN, just that thick black smoke, that fiery, engulfed is really the word. And when you see the shell of the plane that's left, it's just, you can see parts of it there. We now have a clear view today, and our reporter is going to head back out there so you can see what it looks like now. But that's just debris, essentially, just a shell of what the plane was. So a lot of questions about how did it become this fiery, and why?
What happened?
What happened here? The scene of the crash being so all-encompassing and devastating kind of leads to, I'm sure, where this NTSB investigation will go. And so actually, our Nate Morbido, our investigative reporter, got a chance to speak with a former NTSB investigator about how an investigation like this starts, what are the things they're looking for, why it takes so long, and when we'll likely know more.
21 years. And what was kind of the extent of the job that you did while there?
During my course as an accident investigator with the NTSB, I was a field investigator, unit supervisor, regional director, and then I led the GO team out of Washington, D.C. on major accident investigations the last 10 plus years of my career. So I investigated Value Jet, American 1420 at Little Rock, and a number of other major events, aircraft accident events, not only here in the United States, but around the world.
So you are a consultant now still? Is that kind of
I
your
am
job?
consulting. I do accident investigation training for clients, corporate clients, as well as airlines and unions, and I enhance aviation safety through my podcast and YouTube channel, and just education. That's the big thing about lessons learned from accident investigations.
All right, so we have very limited information on what happened when Greg Biffle and his family were killed in this plane crash here in North Carolina today. Initial thoughts based on what you've seen, what we should be asking, what we should know about the circumstances.
Well, there are a number of things based on this early information. One, of course, is the fact that apparently during the takeoff and immediate departure, the aircraft experienced some sort of mechanical malfunction or failure. Apparently, from what I've been able to glean, there are witnesses that heard possibly a loud bang or explosion, and then there may have been some fire with the aircraft in flight. That would indicate, or at least focus investigators on the back end of the airplane, because that's where both engines reside. And if there was a catastrophic engine failure, one, you would hear a very loud bang or explosion type noise, and two, because the fuel system is back there, of course, if they couldn't get the fuel system shut off for that engine that may have failed, now all of a sudden you still have fuel coming out at a very high volume, and if it ignites, now you have a trail of fire and smoke.
You know, you saw kind of the path. Tell me your questions about that, why that's to you seemed a bit unusual.
When you look at the flight path based on the ADS-B, which is a better fidelity radar, if you will, of the aircraft, they take off, they start to climb, they get up to around 2,000 feet, which you always want altitude. Altitude gives a pilot time to sort things out. It's apparent that they decided that they needed to return expeditiously back to the airport. Now, when you look at the flight path, and if they really understood the criticality of the nature of the problem, especially if it was a catastrophic failure of the engine, you want to get the airplane back on the ground immediately. You don't necessarily need to fly a specific flight pattern, if you will, that you would normally fly. You declare an emergency and you head straight back to a runway. And in this case, I see that in the flight path, it looks like they're trying to fly a normalized pattern to get back to the runway that they took off on, rather than just immediately make a better than a 180-degree turn. It's more like around a 200-degree turn, and land opposite direction. Land slightly downwind if you need to, but get the airplane on the ground under control. And that's the key. The question for the investigators will be, did the pilots lose control of the aircraft, which resulted in them landing short of the runway? That's going to be a critical question. Who was flying the airplane, since this is a single pilot certified aircraft? Greg Biffle was a certificated pilot. He was rated to fly multi-engine airplanes, but he was not certificated or rated to fly this type of aircraft. That is a business jet, this Cessna Citation. But if he was working with the pilot who was flying, or at least presumed to be flying, his professional pilot, were they doing things in concert? Was one running the checklist while the other was flying the airplane? These are the operational type questions that the NTSB investigators will have to try and answer.
You're telling me when we pull his pilot certification, he is not allowed to fly this plane solely based on the certificate that he has. Am I right?
Yes, Greg Biffle was a certificated pilot. He held a private pilot certificate, which is, other than a student certificate, is the lowest level. There is a commercial pilot certification and then airline transport, which is the highest. He held a private pilot certificate for single engine airplanes, for multi-engine airplanes under 12,500 pounds, or that were not turbojet or turbofan aircraft. And then he also held a helicopter rating as well.
So essentially, you can't just fly this plane without having someone else with that certification specific for that kind of plane.
In this case, Mr. Biffle could occupy a pilot's seat. He could actually manipulate the flight controls under the coaching or instruction of a certified pilot on that particular airplane.
Okay, so let's talk just real briefly, the age of the airplane, 1981, that's 44 years old. So tell me, red flag or not?
One of the big issues that a lot of people make a big deal about, especially those that don't understand aviation, is when they hear that this airplane was built in 1981, they always immediately think this is an old airplane. Things are going to happen, things are going to break. That's not true. If we were required to maintain our automobiles like we're required to maintain an aircraft, your car would last 30 or 40 years, almost in new condition. It is based on the repetitive inspections that are required for this type of aircraft. And of course, it'll come down to what kind of maintenance had been done in the recent past, not only on the airframe, but also on those engines. Was there a chronic problem? Was there a symptomatic issue that had developed, in the recent past? Was it maintained properly? These are the kinds of questions that the NTSB will put together with regard to maintenance records. They'll go through the maintenance records, they'll interview the maintenance personnel who have touched this airplane and maintain the airplane. And then, of course, the ultimate responsibility for airworthiness of the aircraft resides with the pilot. They must do a pre-flight walk around, as well as from the exterior as well as the interior, to ensure that the airplane is in an airworthy condition for safe operation. All of these factors will take time to develop. I don't know if this airplane had a cockpit voice recorder and or a flight data recorder or some sort of recording device. Some airplanes are required to have them, some aren't. So we'll see if there's any electronic witness type equipment on this airplane, so that will assist investigators to try and determine what may have been going on in flight.
And we don't have access, that for whatever reason they're not on live ATC, so we can't hear what radio traffic was going on at the time. I noticed there was a bit of a federal rule or recommendation related to these engines not too long ago, related to bird strikes and that kind of thing. Any red flags with the particular kind of engine? And I want to look at, to make sure I tell you right, what kind it is. It is, got it right here. Canada. All right, just want to make sure I get it right.
But
PNW Canada,
yeah, they're Pratt & Whitney.
JT15D1.
Yeah, they're Pratt & Whitney engines. And while, every aircraft with every aircraft engine manufacturer out there, there are repetitive things that come out of the manufacturer so that operators of the aircraft may have to do certain types of inspections or replace parts. That'll be part of the scrutiny that the NTSB uses when they go through the maintenance records to ensure that all of the applicable service bulletins, airworthiness directives have been complied with for not only the engines, but the airframe itself. That is what makes the aircraft airworthy and in a safe condition for operation. The other thing they'll be looking at is wildlife strikes. In this case, possibly bird strikes. I've done accidents in North Carolina with a business type jet similar to this that struck a deer on.
All right, we're breaking into that interview, which we'll come back to later on, especially as we get more information from the NTSB on what happened here. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be speaking to Mike Massaro in just a few minutes here. So stick with us after this break. This interview coming live in just 2 minutes. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. Just about 10 o'clock, actually right on the dot. And we want to get back to this breaking news story of the death of Greg Biffle and his family, obviously leaving such a legacy behind him. And we're getting our first insight into how people are reacting, those who knew him, particularly in the NASCAR community. So we are very lucky today to be joined by Mike Massaro, who has been covering this sport for decades now, works for RFK Racing. And I know, Mike, this is a very personal loss for RFK Racing in particular. I just want to check in and offer our condolences first. How are you and the team doing with this news?
Well, thank you, Julie. We appreciate that. Under the circumstances, I guess we're doing pretty well, but it is devastating news. No question about it. Just not only for RFK Racing, but for the entire NASCAR community. If you're on social media, you cannot scroll without seeing a post from somebody who Greg touched. And it's not just in the sport. It's also outside the sport. His humanitarian efforts after Hurricane Helene, touched thousands of people and just really speaks to who Greg really was beyond a race car driver.
You have the unique experience of covering the sport for so long and then now being a part of the team. I know that Greg Biffle drove for Roush. I would be really curious to know any interactions that stick out to you, whether when he was driving or after the fact in his humanitarian work, any interactions that are sticking with you today that you had with him.
Well, they were always the same. I mean, Greg was super consistent. He was a driver who, from day one as a young driver in the Truck Series, going back to 1998, to just recently when he was in his post-career, when he was just driving in fun events with, some thrill shows and things of that nature. He was always the same, very consistent, ultra competitive, but he never let that take over his personality. He was always fun, always enjoyed what he was doing. You could tell that. He just was so enthusiastic about the sport. He just loved life. He loved being with people. He loved people in the community. He loved anything that involved motorsports of any kind. And he liked helping people, as I alluded to with his humanitarian efforts. I mean, he was always the same. There are so many drivers, Julie, who come into the sport as a young driver and are affected by the outside sources, whether it's the fame, whether it's the money, and they change. Greg never did. He remained grounded, and he will always be appreciated for that, I'm sure.
And Mike, I'm really glad you brought up Hurricane Helene. That was such a huge tragedy here in North Carolina, and Greg stepped up immediately. I remember we did stories with him going and delivering resources to those who needed it. I think that really speaks to, I know he's not from North Carolina, but how he made North Carolina and the community here his home.
Yeah, you're right. He's from Vancouver, Washington, but he lived in the Charlotte community for so long that it became a home for him, and he certainly had a connection to all the people here. So it certainly appeared that it touched his heart, what the folks in Western North Carolina were going through after the hurricane, and he put together what I consider, kind of a humanitarian air force, if you will. Not only did he make runs with his own helicopter up to the mountains to deliver supplies and things like that, but he also recruited other people who had their own private aircrafts who could also participate. And it just kind of snowballed from there. From when I recall, supplies were just pouring in. There were warehouses full of supplies that he was delivering up there, along with the collaboration he had with other people on their own helicopters. If it hadn't been for him, the suffering would have continued much longer. And I know there are a lot of people that are completely indebted to him and the folks surrounding his efforts during the hurricane relief efforts.
It's been so bittersweet to hear about all the people speaking out who were personally impacted by his generosity during that time. Now, I've also got Carlene here, who's a big NASCAR fan herself.
I am. My family has been a big fan for years and years, and I wanted to ask, I know Greg was just named one of, a couple years ago, 75 greatest drivers in the sport. And anything he got behind the wheel of, any car he drove, any truck he drove, anything he touched, he drove the heck out of it. So can you explain, what was the X factor behind his success? What's made him stand out from the field?
If I could pinpoint that and package it, I'm sure there's a lot of drivers who would like to know that secret too. It was such natural talent and his dedication to his craft. He would concentrate on, being in the simulator as a race car driver and doing so much work there, a lot of homework. But as you mentioned, Carlene, he could drive anything. He loved his dune buggy, right? So he liked going out and doing that kind of thing. Just this summer, he was involved in an exhibition race with one of our drivers, Ryan Preece, up in Connecticut at the Stafford Speedway with the Cletus McFarland Thrill Show, the New England 900. It was kind of more of an exhibition more than anything else, but you could tell it matched his personality because it was all about having fun. He finished second in that race. And afterwards got on the microphone and entertained all the fans at the racetrack. So that's the kind of person he was. That's the kind of driver he was, just so passionate about driving anything, as you say. You can go back to 1998 when he got in a truck and for Jack Roush at the time, and he dominated early in his career, winning the Truck Series championship in 2000. He followed that up by being promoted to what was then the Busch Series, now the Xfinity Series. He won the championship there in 2002, and of course continued to climb the ladder, went to the Cup Series, where he came close to winning a championship, but never did. Had he done that, he would have been the only driver to win championships in all three series. And I think he'll be remembered for that for sure, and that's certainly one of the reasons why he's a Hall of Fame candidate, and I fully expect he'll be in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know in the last couple of days and in the coming days, a lot of people who aren't familiar with Greg Biffle or NASCAR are going to be learning a lot about his legacy. I'm curious, for those people that are just getting an introduction, what do you want people to remember about Greg Biffle?
I want them to remember how good a person he was. Now, he's obviously a championship race car driver, and I don't think anybody will forget that. But I want them to know that Greg was as authentic a human being as you will ever come across. Someone who cared about other human beings, cared about having fun, cared about enjoying life, and just was a good person. He's just a good person who cared not only about people in the sport but outside it as well.
I know that this is a really, really hard time, and so we do so appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Before I let you go, I'm just curious, what's next for RFK Racing in terms of honoring the legacy of such a phenomenal driver and man? Where do you guys go from here?
Yeah, so it's a fluid situation, obviously. We're gathering constantly to talk about what our next steps are, but I can tell you right now, I'm standing in our museum where you can see behind me, there are some of Greg's trophies, fire suit, that's in our museum in Concord. Folks are more than welcome to come here and pay their respects. But as for what's next, we're still in the planning process, and I'm sure there'll be other things to announce shortly.
Definitely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And again, our condolences. I'm sure that people really appreciate you taking the time because this is such a heartbreaking situation, but being able to hear from people who knew him is always the best. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Julie. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we will be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Impact News. It is 10:10 on the dot. You just heard from Mike Massaro, who knew Greg Biffle personally through his work covering NASCAR for decades, but also from his experience at RFK Racing now. So that obviously bittersweet to speak with someone who knew him so fondly and had such great memories. We're going to run that interview back in a little bit because if you missed it, it really was something special. But for now, taking a different angle of this crash, as I said, we're kind of going back and forth between honoring the legacy of Greg Biffle and his family and his philanthropy, and also leading to what brought us to this moment. This is a live look at Iredell County.
Actually, this is from last night. Yes.
Excuse me, a look from last night. You can see right outside the edge of the airfield. Mm-hmm. And that's from when the initial crews were still on scene. You can see it's like foggy. Some of that might be smoke that remains, but we are still going to wait for the NTSB to decide that for us. Our Brad Panovich, though, chief meteorologist, broke down last night how weather might or might not have been an impact in this crash. Again, we're still waiting for that update from the NTSB federal agents who are investigating this afternoon, which we'll bring to you here live on Live Impact News.
We don't really have an exact time. We should mention we don't have an exact time of when they're going to speak.
Yes, we've been told this afternoon. They have announced, even as last night, that they will be speaking. We don't have a time yet, and so if we're on air, we will bring that to you when we get it. But as we now kind of look back and to see what could have impacted this, here's what our Brad Panovich had to say.
Was the tragic events that happened up in Statesville, and it's kind of a unique area for us because our two TV markets kind of meet up there. And I know you guys have done stories on Greg Biffle, and this has been a big story for you. What have you guys been talking about today, and what's been the sentiment from the Triad area about this tragic plane crash today?
Well, I think everybody feeling the same way, right? It's just, gosh, how could this happen? It's just super tragic right before Christmas. But we actually, we talked about Greg a lot not that long ago, just a couple of months back, with the Helene anniversary. One of our anchors here, Megan Malera, sat down with Greg. And they talked for about half an hour about the whole Helene operation that he was so active and involved with his aviation, specifically with helicopter missions. And that was one of the things that Greg really contributed out of his own time, his own expense, his own willingness to help out and do something. And I think that just speaks a lot to his character and what he was about. And to see this now with an aviation tie-in and such a tragedy coming about, it's just horrible to see. And I think at this point, Brad, we're still kind of unsure, right? Like what type of cause there could be. I certainly don't have any inside information about that, but the weather has not been the best today. I don't know if that's a factor, but just horrible to see these images for sure.
Yeah, Tim, we're meteorologists. A lot of us dabble in aviation, or we have some connection to aviation because, let's be honest, if you're a pilot, you've probably taken meteorology courses at some point, and if you're a meteorologist, you deal a lot with aviation because it's part of it. They just cross over quite a bit, and it's funny because so many of our colleagues, Tim, are pilots and meteorologists. So neither of us are pilots, but we deal a lot with some of these conditions, and we understand like flight rules at airports, the METARs, which we read all the time. We read kind of the same language that pilots do. But, the first thing we always think of, Tim, we're meteorologists and we see a plane crash, we think, okay, could weather be a contributing factor? Because it is oftentimes a factor in these crashes. But I'll be honest with you, it wasn't great this morning, but it was a lot better at 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m. in Statesville than it was this afternoon and this evening when it got really bad. I could not find anything too crazy weather-wise. No strong winds, not a ton of turbulence, not a ton of icing. Probably the only thing that I looked at that maybe kind of just to peel back was the METAR had 5,000 foot overcast and had broken at 1,200. So it wasn't perfect visibility, Tim, but it was pretty good up to 5,000 feet, which is not bad even for a plane that didn't have instrumentation. But this was a big plane. This was not like your typical. I think people hear Cessna. That's the company name, not the type of plane. This was a Citation. This was basically a private jet, right? And it had all the equipment to fly in the clouds. So there's really nothing that jumps off the map to me, at least, that there was a ton of weather issues there. There was some drizzle. The visibility, I think, was like at times was about a 5 mile, and then it got worse as it went on. But at least initially, I don't think weather was a big factor. But we really won't know, Tim, until the NTSB fully investigates this.
Yeah, Brad, do you know the exact? I know they've mentioned it was in the 10 o'clock hour. What's interesting about the 10 o'clock hour, I've got this pulled up here. If you look at Statesville on the left. So this is about 10 o'clock on the nose. At 10 o'clock on the nose, the visibility was about 10. But if you go to 10:15, it's 5. And then if you go to 10:40, well, then it's down to 1.75 miles. So it is decreasing during that time. Now, planes take off and land in fog all the time, right? So I can't say that that's a factor. I don't know exactly what minute it happened. I don't remember. But there's been fog. There's been that cool air wedge that we talk about that's been creating some of that fog along with the drizzle. But otherwise, not a ton of really harsh crosswind or anything like that I noticed. So it's hard to say. And you had posted earlier, which I thought was really interesting, the flight path.
Yeah.
And again, not a pilot, not an aviation expert, don't claim to be. But if you're taking off, and then you go around just very shortly, and then immediately start to return to the airport,
yeah.
well, that might suggest to me that there's some sort of an issue with the aircraft, right? So that we don't know, but that could have been a factor.
Yeah, normally in weather situations, you're not turning around to go back to the airport, because if the weather was bad at the airport, that's probably the last place you want to go back to, right? So there clearly was something wrong with the plane, and they were trying to get the plane on the ground. So this is the flight path, just to tell everybody. So this is public data. All planes have, this ABS data. So I went back and I grabbed the flight path, and I'm going to try to pull this back a little bit. And so it took off. I'll try to do this so it's a little sensitive here. We'll pull this back, just try to fly it backwards here and show you what happened. So the plane took off, and I'm going to zoom in and kind of show you. It took off in this direction, took basically a left turn. Mm-hmm. It got some elevation here. So this is a 3D plot. This shows you how high off the ground it was. And then it immediately took a left turn. Now, what's interesting, some of the pilots I talked to, Tim, were kind of curious. So it was coming back to the airport. Clearly, they radioed in that they were having engine trouble. We don't know what that means. Was the engine out? Was it malfunctioning? Was it weak? We don't know. But if you look carefully, the airport is right here. They could have came in and just landed the opposite direction, right? If there was an emergency, they would have cleared the airfield. Could have landed. So some of the pilot friends I have had said, why didn't they just land right there? Why did they circle around at a much lower altitude, by the way, come in? And I know we've all seen the pictures. I don't want to show them again. They're kind of horrible. But even though you see that burning debris on the runway, the plane didn't actually make it to the runway. It landed short in this golf course. It actually took out some trees, a fence. There's a big scour in the ground here where it came up short. And then the debris, because of the forward momentum, ended up on the runway. And so what that tells you, and just this is the thing I do know about planes, and to create lift, you got to force air over the wings, right? So there's two ways to do that. With the engines going fast, or at higher altitudes, you can dip the nose and pick up speed through descent, and actually creates lift. And so if you don't have lift close to the ground, the only thing that's going to help you is an engine. And if you only have one engine, then that's where you run into some issues. So I guess the leading theory is they had some type of engine power issue. They clearly did not have enough lift to make it all the way to the runway. And we don't know if the engine was blown out. We don't know if it just was malfunctioning. And even I've heard, a bird strike is certainly in the realm of possibility, got ingested into one of the engines. But we talked to Chris Dunn, who's a colleague of ours. He's out at our Phoenix station. I talked to him today on our live Impact News, and he's a brilliant guy, by the way. He's a meteorologist, a pilot. He's an instructor, and he also buys and sells airplanes, so he knows a lot. And he was pretty clear. He said, Tim, that this plane could fly with one engine, and he even said you could actually fly it with no engines if you had enough time to glide it in. So he was curious as well what was going on. So we talked to him today, and this is a little piece of the interview we had with him, and he had some really good insight on, from a pilot's perspective, on what could have been going on. Did instruction. He's very familiar with these planes. Obviously not going to know a lot about this particular crash, but I wanted to bring in Chris Dunn, the chief meteorologist from our Phoenix 12 station. And Chris, thanks for joining us. And I know you know a lot about the Citation 550, and you're a pilot yourself. Could you tell our viewers watching online a little bit about what is going through a pilot's mind when they're taking off and they report engine trouble? What's the process that they would be going through to maybe get back to the airport, or how does that work from a pilot standpoint?
Well, thanks for having me on, Brad. The first process is you want to deal with the emergency, and all pilots, no matter the skill level or the certification level, you're taught to deal with an engine out, whether it's if you have one or two or four engines on the airplane. So you deal with the emergency, and the first rule of any emergency in aviation is fly the airplane. Now, I was looking at some of the observations in that area, and they probably were in the clouds at that point, or maybe not, but pretty close to being in the clouds. So that adds an extra dimension. Not only are you trying to deal with an airplane that may not be functioning properly, but you also have the fact that you can't see outside, which in a normally functioning airplane is perfectly fine. And we're not sure, or at least I have not seen from some of the reports, if they have checked on with air traffic control at that point, because Statesville is a non-tower controlled airport, which is fine. You just do self-announces. But if you're flying IFR or instrument flight rules into the clouds, you are given a release time, you take off, and then you check in with air traffic control. I don't know if they had an opportunity to do just that, but obviously there was some sort of a problem where they took off and they made an immediate left-hand turn coming back to the airport, trying to get back on the ground. So if there was some sort of an engine problem or an engine failure, the first thing you want to do is secure the engine and try to keep the aircraft under control, and then try to get it back down on the ground as quickly as possible.
So if you lose one engine, obviously this plane can fly with one engine. We heard from another expert that it technically could fly with no engines for a while at altitude, obviously. What is the biggest problem with flying with one engine? Let's say one's completely out and you're coming in for landing. What are some of the pitfalls that a pilot might have to deal with as they're coming in for an emergency landing, which this would be, right?
Yeah, certainly it can fly on one engine because it has two. The biggest challenge, if you will, is something called asymmetrical thrust. So if you think about it, you have two engines, and if you lose one, the other one is going to cause it to yaw or shift over to one side. So you have to account for that. And a lot of the multi-engine training, the curriculum, is based on what happens if you do lose an engine, and how are you going to treat that emergency. You need to shut down the one inoperative engine and then be able to control the airplane flying on one engine. So there are a lot of procedures that you have to do, and then flying an instrument approach on a single engine in a multi-engine aircraft, that's a big part of training and the recurrent training as well. So there's a lot of emphasis put into that in the training environment on operating on just one engine in a multi-engine aircraft. So the flight crew, don't know if there was one or two. I believe the Citation 550 is certified for single pilot operations, but a lot of these operators do operate with two pilots up front, and that just adds an extra layer of safety. We don't know exactly the nature of the accident and the crash and the situation, and of course in the coming days we'll find out more, we'll learn more about exactly what happened, but typically flight crews at that level are very well trained to handle a situation like that. But as I said, you have layers of different things that are going on at the same time, and that can make it extra difficult to deal with a situation like that.
So, Chris, I mean, they took off. You said it's an untowered airport. With Statesville Airport's pretty small for most airport standards, but a lot of commercial, I would say commercial, but private jets fly out of there because of the NASCAR teams. Would there be a reason for them to go back to that airport or try to go to another airport? The fact that this happened so quickly, was that just the best place to go right after they reported the trouble they had?
Yeah, and if they were, their mindset was, we got to get this on the ground right now. We just left a perfectly good airport right behind us. Let's do a U-turn and get right back down on the ground. If they had everything under control and things were stabilized, they could declare a May Day and try to get back into Douglas, the big airport with a lot more facilities and a lot more emergency response there. But I think their mindset was, we got to get this on the ground. We got to get it on the ground now. We just left an airport behind us. Let's turn back around and get back down on the ground. Again, I can't put my mind in the minds of the pilots on that airplane, but that would be my first guess as to why they turned back around and tried to get back down to the ground in Statesville.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. One last question before we let you go. I really appreciate you taking this time, and I'm glad you're giving us this input, that we don't know a lot of the information, but from an aircraft standpoint, you're familiar with this aircraft. What can you tell us about this specific aircraft? What is its typical usage, passenger load, those kind of things? What would this aircraft normally be used for?
Yeah, exactly what they were using it for: executive transport, business aviation. The citation 2, the line, the 525, 550, to be a little more technical. Very popular business jet. This one, I looked up the number. I think it was manufactured in 1981, which is not a big deal. You think a 1981 car, wow, that's really old. But for an aircraft, not so much, because every airplane in the U.S., in order to legally fly, they have to undergo an annual inspection. That doesn't that goes for the airliners, business jets, even the small trainers. Everything has to be inspected annually. And in addition, those inspections are much more in depth on a jet aircraft. And then the insurance requirements are usually pretty high. So you're dealing with a lot of levels and a lot of layers of certification, of the training of the aircraft. Typically, the aircraft, 6 to 8 people on board, and you can do 1,500-mile legs, 2,000-mile legs. So say from Charlotte to New York, that's an easy hop. Charlotte to Miami, Florida. My understanding was this was heading down to Florida and then out to the Bahamas. A pretty common mission for this aircraft. So they are used for personal transport, for business transportation, and Statesville is perfectly fine to use that airport. 7,000-foot runway, plenty of runway length, and they're just outside of the busy, what's called the Class Bravo airspace in Charlotte, which is a highly restricted zone of airspace. So they can take off and they can land. They don't have to even talk to anybody in air traffic control, unless they're flying into the clouds and on an IFR flight plan, which they most likely were, and aircraft like this typically are. So once they get in the clouds and they check in with Charlotte Approach, and then they're handed off to Washington, D.C. Center or Jacksonville Center or something like that. And so the different layers of air traffic control will handle them. But again, it's really early in the process, and we're trying to just look at some of the details and pick apart what went on, and I'm sure a lot of those questions will be answered in the coming days. And unfortunately, to hear the news that you had in the breaking news at the top of this cut-in, an unfortunate end to this crash.
Yeah. Site there. He's a wealth of knowledge, a really smart guy, and deals with a lot of that. And without speculating about the cause, I thought that was a good insight from a pilot's perspective on what happened. I heard that more than once. Something he said that, and some of my other pilot friends said, that the goal in this situation is to fly the aircraft. And people that don't understand what that means, it's like there's a lot of stuff going on, like stressful stuff. There's probably buzzers going off, alarms. You got passengers probably very scared. The goal is just to fly the plane, do whatever it takes to get that thing down safely.
Yeah, I mean, it's super educational just to hear all of those things about the plane, things that we wouldn't understand as non-pilots. But just the fact that there are still a lot of things that you can do, and something went wrong in that short amount of time in the air that was just irrecoverable. So we'll learn more about that tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's just so sad.
Yeah, and we might find out that maybe weather wasn't a direct cause, Tim, but one thing that when I spoke with Chris and another pilot friend of mine had said, that might have happened was as they were coming back to the airport because of that low cloud deck, which I saw that the maximum altitude they got to was like 1,500 feet, that maybe they got lower to get below the cloud deck so they could see the airport instead of relying on the instruments. Okay. And that might have made them come in lower than they normally would have. So that's speculation, but that was something that was brought up by a pilot saying, hey, maybe they tried to get below the cloud deck to see the runway, and that could have been a problem because that plane needs a little bit more speed and room, and they just didn't have as much because of the low cloud deck.
Definitely some very helpful breakdowns and information there from our Brad Panovich and Tim at WFMY. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to get back to this big story and some other headlines when we come back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Impact News, just past 10:30 on the clock. And of course, the big story of today is that plane crash out of Statesville that killed Greg Biffle and his family and others. So heartbreaking news that we are going to continue to follow and hit very hard, as this is really hitting the community really, really close to home. But we do want to take a moment to also mention the fact that President Trump is on his way to North Carolina. He's going to Rocky Mount. Notably, that is one of the redrawn districts, state districts, congressional districts that is going to impact the 2026 elections. And I've done a bit of coverage speaking with Congressman Don Davis, who was supposedly drawn out of a seat. He says he's going to continue to run for this seat, but this is a Republican redraw. State Republicans say it was in line with what President Trump said he wanted in order to gain another Republican seat for North Carolina at U.S. Congress. At the same time as his visit, he's going to be speaking most likely about the economy, which he's been hitting very hard. And of course, North Carolina Democrats are firing back at his visit. So we're going to get to this for a bit because this is also another big story anytime President Trump comes to visit. This is what North Carolina Democrats have to say, and we're going to bring you updates after President Donald Trump's speech later today as well.
All right.
Good morning, North Carolina.
Good morning.
My name is Dorian Palmer, and I serve as the Coalitions and Community Engagement Director for the North Carolina Democratic Party. Here's what we know. We know that Eastern North Carolina was a Democratic stronghold for 120 years in our state. And we know Donald Trump knows that, and we know Michael Whatley knows that. We know that as we go into next year, fighting for Eastern North Carolina, fighting for folks across our state is going to be critical. And that's something Roy Cooper has shown he's been able to do since 1986 when he's led this state. Folks, the work we have to do is to show up for communities, to fight for them, and remind folks that Donald Trump does not speak for Eastern North Carolina or for this state, and neither does D.C. insider lobbyist Michael Whatley. Folks, what we know going into today is they're going to say things about Governor Cooper that's not true. What we know is they're going to say things that the folks across North Carolina know to be untrue, as they voted for Roy Cooper every election in North Carolina since 1986. We know that. We know they're going to say things that are divisive, untrue, and harmful, and we know Donald Trump is not fighting for the people of North Carolina. Folks, we saw just the other day that Donald Trump continues to say things that cause harm and division, and we need a person in our U.S. Senate who will provide loyalty and growth and continuity of care and services, and that's why, folks, we're excited to vote for Roy Cooper, and why Michael Whatley will cause harm and is not good for the folks of our state. Folks, I want to introduce you now to Chair Anderson Clayton of the North Carolina Democratic Party. We're excited to have her. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning.
Dorian is from rural western North Carolina, but has been all over eastern North Carolina with the state party as we have traveled throughout the state over the last 3 years, making the case and also trying to rebuild our party in places of the state that oftentimes have been forgotten even by the people that currently represent it. Good morning, and thank y'all for being here today. I deeply appreciate it. Donald Trump is coming to North Carolina tonight to lie and say that cost and the economy are great right now. And if you're somebody who's just had to go to a grocery store recently, you know that's not true. Costs aren't down, and Trump and D.C. Republicans are making life less affordable than ever, especially for people here in North Carolina and especially people in eastern North Carolina. North Carolina families are facing skyrocketing costs because Republicans have created a health care crisis and refused to fix it. They've gutted Medicaid. They put 5 rural hospitals in North Carolina at risk of closing already. They continue to refuse to extend the ACA tax credits, which means that on January 1st, every single person across North Carolina is going to see their health insurance costs skyrocket. We couldn't understand a North Carolina that doesn't prioritize health care and education in it, especially after yesterday when we just saw a North Carolina legend unfortunately pass away. Governor Jim Hunt was a legacy in North Carolina, somebody that stood up for the fact that no matter what your zip code is, you deserve to have the opportunity and the access to health care and to education. And what we've seen from Republicans in North Carolina and from a Donald Trump administration is an administration that's willing to destroy and demise the social safety net that has kept so many people across North Carolina not only in this state, but able to thrive in this state. In 2026, we're going to elect a U.S. Senator. And who we choose to elect could be the difference between affordable health care or medical debt, between cheaper groceries or going hungry, and between a champion who will fight for North Carolina or for a DC insider that's handpicked by Republicans who's also going to face a primary himself, because even the grassroots know that Donald Trump handpicked Michael Whatley for this seat. And you might have heard of that DC insider. He's pushing the same agenda that is hurting North Carolina families across this state. Michael Whatley supports gutting Medicaid for hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians, calling it a huge win, saying that he would have voted for it in a heartbeat if he had been our U.S. Senator. And we know that right now, Tom Tillis, the reason why he's not running for re-election is because he was faced with that hard choice of having to say 600,000 people across North Carolina immediately deserve to have that health care access revoked that Governor Cooper fought so hard to get in a bipartisan deal, right, for decades across this state. Whatley has called for the repeal of the ACA, and now he supports the Republicans refusing to extend the ACA tax credits in D.C., making health care less affordable for people across this state. And tonight, Michael Whatley is welcoming those same D.C. politicians that people across North Carolina, to me, seem pretty fed up from, inviting them back to our state with open arms, rubbing it in the face of families who can no longer afford their health care, or having to look at their children who rely on Medicare right now and Medicaid right now and asking them what they're going to do. And Whatley wants us to elect him to the United States Senate. Thank you, North Carolina. If we know one thing, it's that Whatley will always side with D.C. politicians to hurt working families and make life more expensive. And after all, that's what he spent his entire career doing. Whatley is a lifelong D.C. political hack, a big oil lobbyist who has spent his career putting billionaires and special interests ahead of families across the United States, not just in North Carolina. We deserve leaders who will lower health care costs and make it easier for North Carolina families to get ahead. Governor Cooper has spent his life delivering for working families, and as governor, he made it his mission to expand Medicaid to the nearly 700,000 North Carolinians who are at risk of still losing their health insurance. And at a time when we're in the middle of a health care crisis, when families can't afford coverage, we need leaders like Roy Cooper in the U.S. Senate, right? Right. Look, no matter what Donald Trump says tonight, remember that he and Michael Whatley are attacking our health care, making it unaffordable, and Whatley will continue to champion that agenda in the United States Senate. And that's why we're going to reject Michael Whatley next November. And I need everybody who's watching this, who's angry about an administration and what they've done, to step up in your backyard today. Candidate filing ends today in North Carolina at 12 p.m., and we're excited to make sure that we're contesting every single seat humanly possible to ensure that we're holding Republicans accountable in North Carolina, even under gerrymandered maps that they've given to us so far. We're not going to leave a stone unturned this year, and we need your help in making sure that these candidates have the resources and the boots on the ground across North Carolina. So I hope you'll get involved today. But thank you for being here. Do I have any questions from my press? Yes. How important is this extremely important. North Carolina is, in my opinion, the only competitive seat that's a red to blue seat in the country next year, and especially important when we look at gaining control of the U.S. Senate.
Why Why do you believe that Watley is the strongest candidate? There's slumbers in the race. Do you think Watley is favored here? Do you think that it's a messy, complicated primary, or what do you agree with that?
I mean, Michael Watley's been handpicked by Donald Trump, and if anything, Republicans in North Carolina sure seem to think that Donald Trump's endorsement is going to help them win a primary. I don't know about you, but I would check in on Phil Berger in the North Carolina State Senate right now, who just begged for Donald Trump's endorsement by trading a congressional seat, or at least attempting to, right from Eastern North Carolina with Don Davis's seat right now that we're looking at, trying to gerrymander another black representative out of Congress from North Carolina right now. But Don Davis is still running in that re-election, baby. Let me tell you, he's won an R+3 district before, twice, in fact, and I know that he's going to put up one hell of a fight in Eastern North Carolina for the families out there right now, too.
Anderson Glenwright, Progressive News. Trump's going to Rocky Mount, an area having the farmers that are being hurt by the tariffs. What's your opinion of the area he's picked to speak tonight?
I mean, I think Donald Trump right now is trying to do anything he can to save face with the families that are going to be most impacted by the policies that have come down from Washington, D.C. Don Davis's congressional district, where Rocky Mount, well, his former congressional district, right, in that sense, but where Rocky Mount is in that capacity at this moment in time is where you're seeing the most aggressive amounts of health care cuts in this country or in this state. The most amount of Medicaid recipients are in Eastern North Carolina in Don Davis's congressional district per capita from every other congressional district. We would see the most amount of SNAP benefits that had their programs cut from Republican policies earlier this year and the threat to it. I mean, Eastern North Carolina is a hotbed, in my opinion, for the type of people that this administration has picked on and honestly tried to, I think, demoralize. And right now we're trying to see him go there and save face, and it's not going to work because people are going to watch the fact that their health insurance is going up on January the 1st. These families are not going to buy into the lip service that they're being paid by this administration right now. They're going to actually see what's happening on the ground and who's impacting them the most. And Democrats have got to be there every step of the way to show up and say, we've got the way to fix it.
Republicans have narrowed the registration gap in North Carolina, basically wiped out the Democratic advantage. Why do you think that's happening?
I mean, when you look at 88 counties in North Carolina that almost have non-competitive state legislative elections thanks to gerrymandering, North Carolina is a unique state that when you're an unaffiliated or registered that way, you can go in on election day and choose which ballot, or during early voting and choose which ballot you want to vote on in a primary. And that choice matters to people right now who are still trying to fight for the better of two evils, especially in rural North Carolina. And I think that's why you see such a huge registration gap. And also, I'm not going to lie to folks, I understand right now that people are upset with both political parties, that people are disenchanted with politics, that they don't think that, you see the fight that we need to out of both sides of this. But I need to be able to prove to people across this state this year, and we have got candidates that will prove to people across this state this year that this party is a party that is going to fight for them. And that means that we're going to recruit people from across North Carolina up and down the ballot, and it also means that we're going to bring new faces to this party, and I think that's what we need to do.
Yes. Giving this address at 9 p.m. on Friday night, the week before Christmas. What do you do?
I think he's desperate. I mean, genuinely, I think that's what you're seeing right now. If he's having to come out on the stump so early for Michael Watley, if his policies in North Carolina were working effectively out of Washington, D.C., you wouldn't have to be on the ground a year before the election. Any other questions? Thank y'all so much for coming. I know y'all got to be an hour or two away from here, so I appreciate it. And thank y'all. Okay, but wait, can we take a photo? Can we get a picture? Can everybody get in here? And shout out to...
All right, that was the Democratic response as President Donald Trump heads to Rocky Mount to support Senate candidate Michael Watley. Of course, this is coming at a really busy time in terms of politics. We expect Donald Trump to not just support Watley, but specifically focus on his economic policies, which Trump spoke about the other night in his address to the nation, prime time, which we carried here on WCNC+. We're going to take a quick break and get back to, of course, the big story of the day on top of the president's visit, which is the fatal plane crash that killed Greg Biffle and his family and others. So stick with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Impact News. We're just here for the next 12 minutes before we head to our next newscast, and we want to get back to the big story of the day, which is that fatal plane crash in Statesville. 7 people killed, including NASCAR legend Greg Biffle and his family. I mean, you can just look at the images here from yesterday. This crash happened just past 10:15 yesterday morning, so it's been about 24 hours since this happened. The FAA was on scene pretty much immediately investigating, and we know the NTSB, which will be leading that long-form investigation, got on scene last night. And we're unclear of, at this point, when they will be holding a press conference. We just know sometime this afternoon. So we're going to bring you those updates once we get them. But of course, I mean, you can just see the debris there. This airport will be closed for the foreseeable future. Today, as we wait to learn more information about what happened in this crash, though, we are remembering the legacy of Greg Biffle. Of course, as I said, NASCAR legend, phenomenal driver. I mean, Carlene said it earlier, X Factor driver. He just had it.
He had it. He was a natural talent. He drove for the trucks, and he drove in the Busch Series, which is now the Xfinity Series, and he was a Cup Series driver. Like when we talked to Mike Massaro, he drove dune buggies. He drove anything with wheels and a motor. He was driving it, and he drove the heck out of it, and he was a natural talent that, you know, it's like one of a kind.
Yeah, and we're not going to just remember his NASCAR legacy, but also afterwards, his generosity in the wake of multiple natural disasters, but specifically a lot of us here remember Hurricane Helene and how he flew to deliver resources and helped organize other relief flights. So we have some NASCAR fans, NASCAR experts here in the building. So last night, Colin Mayfield got a chance to speak with Nathaniel, who is one of our
digital producers. He's a NASCAR fan, longtime NASCAR fan. So we got to hear from him as well.
Yeah, this is their conversation last night about Greg Biffle's impact.
Racing legend Greg Biffle and part of his family killed in a crash. 7 individuals were killed just this morning after 10 o'clock in Statesville, North Carolina at the airport. We want to bring in Nathan Puente, Nathaniel, who does so many different things behind the scenes here at WCNC Charlotte, but you have an intricate working knowledge not only of NASCAR, but really how Mr. Biffle, one of the top 75 drivers in NASCAR, right, has had such an impact not only on the sport of NASCAR, but really motorsport as a whole, Nathan. So let's just start there. I mean, this man was a racing driver through and through, wasn't he?
Sure, absolutely, and wish we were here talking under better circumstances about his career or about NASCAR in general, but absolutely devastated by the news today to hear that he was killed in this plane crash along with several members of his family and other people as well. But yeah, Greg Biffle, just an absolute icon. I mean, when you think about 2000s NASCAR, there are a few names for NASCAR fans who come to your mind, like Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Matt Kenseth. Greg Biffle's right there. I mean, he was there with Roush Racing for well over a decade. And really, I mean, Brad Keselowski, who now owns RFK Racing, who is the current incarnation of the team that Biffle drove for, he said it well, that Greg Biffle helped define the era. He helped define that team in the 2000s. Roush Racing became such an enormous racing juggernaut in NASCAR in the 2000s, and I think part of that is because of Greg Biffle. It's because of Mark Martin. It's because of Matt Kenseth. You know, these drivers were so good around that time, and he was great at that. And I think what you're seeing a lot from everyone who's paying tribute to him, and I want to make sure I do this as well, is just the work that he did outside of racing, I think, was so important because, you know, obviously what we've heard is after Hurricane Helene, he was flying his helicopter out to Western North Carolina, delivering supplies. He was helping really with that, and I know we were on top of that coverage, of course, when Hurricane Helene hit, and you know, seeing all these people coming together from the community helping out, and he was there. You know, he wasn't just a guy, you know, he lives off Lake Norman or wherever he lived and has a helicopter. You know, he was using his value, using his status to do something really good and impactful for the community. And outside of that, when he was racing, he was very outspoken on animal rights and doing stuff for animal charities and shelters. And so, you know, just a really all-around great guy, and just absolutely heartbroken to hear about this news today.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us remember the images of him in his helicopter, right? That black helicopter dropping off loads of water and food to individuals. And honestly, you know, I know there there was a lot of operations ongoing at the state and federal level, but Mr. Biffle was one of the first people to be in contact with so many individuals in Western North Carolina. I remember in one specific case where there was a family they got his attention up in the helicopter with a large mirror, and I just remember he put out on X telling individuals that if that was your family, he made contact with them. And yeah, I just the essence of care around all these little details that he had. I'm sure he carried that over from NASCAR, but just the immense humanitarian response, right? He was there with Jamaica, and we rolled a clip earlier today about how he felt so far away, but that he still felt like he needed to do something for the people in Jamaica, and so he did have a calling, and felt like he had a stage and a platform to be able to utilize, which I think so many people think and maybe don't think about, right, early on in their career, and maybe utilize it later on. But I think he really understood, what his career was for, and how to really carry himself. So, we are talking a lot about what he did, after racing. But I mean, he put motorsport on the map. I mean, not just NASCAR with stock cars, but also truck racing, right? I mean, people, we can't forget. I mean, he was in the truck series for quite a long time as well, right?
Yeah, he's definitely started his career like any racer down in lower series, but had kind of a meteoric rise out in the early 2000s. Went in there, won the 2000 truck title, won the 2002 Busch Series, what is now, they just changed the name this year, NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series.
That's right.
Before, for a long time, it was the Xfinity Series. It changes. But he was the first driver to ever do that, to win the championship in both of those series. So
wow.
I just remember during his whole career, you would always hear that all the time. Greg Biffle, at the time, because two guys have done it since, but you would always hear, he's the only one who's ever done this. He's the only one who's ever done this.
Right.
And we were always hoping that he would maybe win the Cup Series title and be the first one to have that triple crown, like win all three of those. But he never did get that. But he did. He was very competitive as well in the Cup Series. But just throughout his whole career, just one of those guys you never count out. Was someone who was always a threat to win just about every week. I mean, part of that is the team he drove for was so dominant, like I said, in the 2000s. But he helped bring that up because, when he came in to Roush Racing in the early 2000s, they were really anchored by Mark Martin. He was the cornerstone driver of the team throughout the 1990s. And then they brought in Matt Kenseth in 2000, and he was doing really well as well. But they were always trying to search for that third car, that third driver. And, they tried guys like Kevin LePage or Ted Musgrave or whoever, and never really stuck out. But then Greg Biffle came in 2003 in his rookie year, still in that third car. So you're thinking, and I know you're an F1 guy, so you might know sort of how it works, how like some teams, like even within the same team, might get more resources than others.
Exactly.
And he has that third car that maybe isn't getting as much attention as the other two are, but he still is able to come out in 2003 in his rookie year and win a race. He won the Pepsi 400 at Daytona. He beat out my favorite all-time driver, Bobby Labonte, so I'm still a little bitter about it 22 years later. But he won that race, and I feel like that kind of put him on the map to go out and have the kind of career he had. He nearly won the championship in 2005, narrowly lost it out to Tony Stewart. But, he
Some really helpful insight there, Carlene, from Nathaniel. I know that you're a NASCAR fan too, and this is really the time when people are going to be looking back and just looking at his legacy, both as a driver and as a person. I know that this is a really
it's a long resume.
Long
on both
resume.
sides, as a humanitarian work and as a driver. It's kind of hard to put into words just the impact that he had.
Yeah, his family too. I know his wife Christina, who also unfortunately passed in this crash. We heard from some Congress people, some lawmakers yesterday who worked closely with them in that humanitarian effort. And one of them said the last time I talked to Christina was her asking, how can we help with Jamaica? Yeah. And I think that just really speaks to their legacy as people, but also him as a family man and just a phenomenal person, fantastic person and driver. Yeah. We're gonna be back here at 12:30 with all the updates. Our reporters are on their way there now. And I know that this afternoon we're expecting that updated press conference from the NTSB as we try to figure out what happened here. We do not have an exact time yet. Just wanted to note that. But if it is during our afternoon section, we will bring that to you live, of course. But we're going to take our break here and push you to Charlotte today. So stick with us, and please join us back here at 12:30 with more on this breaking news.